As long as there have been cities, people have always had a place where they could congregate, where they would go to talk with friends, have something to eat, shop, and be entertained. In the 1990s, that place can be best described as a mall. But it wasn't too long ago that malls didn't exist. So where was that special community gathering place? People had to go somewhere. Some people claim that somewhere was even more lavish, elegant, and some would even say exhilarating than any shopping center that exists now. That place wasn't just an inn or a resort or a restaurant, but it was all of those things and even more. It was a hotel, a grand hotel. It was the 1920s. World War I, the Great War, had come to an end. America was riding high, and millions of doughboys who had seen the splendors of regal Europe dreamed of making home just as extravagant, exotic, and luxurious as the old world. It was the beginning of the golden age of the Grand Hotel in America. Astronomical amounts of money were spent on building American palaces that the common man could enjoy. Built in 1912 at a cost of $610,000, the Hotel Utica quickly became Oneida County's standard-bearer of elegance. It had 10 floors and 300 rooms. Rates started at an exorbitant $1.50. Utica had more to boast than just one grand hotel. On the north side of Bleecker Street, the Hotel Martin had 450 rooms. During the late 19th century, the American Hotel stood at the site. In 1901, William Martin bought the hotel, renovated it, and renamed it the Hotel Martin. Syracuse, too, had its grand hotels as well. In September of 1892, a huge brick hotel was illuminated from roof to street for its grand opening, built by the estate of Alonzo C. Yates. The Yates Hotel had 200 rooms and the longest, and some would say friendliest, stretch of mahogany in central New York. $800,000 was raised by investors in 1909 to supply a need for more hotel accommodations. And by August of 1910, the Onondaga Hotel was formally opened. Willett and Hannah Brown purchased this house from Alonzo Yates, and it served as a free dispensary for years. Situated on a triangular corner lot, it proved to be a challenge to architects. Being as stubborn as mules, though, they solved all of their problems. As a matter of fact, mules played an important role in physically moving one hotel, the Truax, to make way for another. The wondrous construction of the Hotel Syracuse began in 1922. By April of 1924, the Hotel Syracuse was finally finished. While there were other hotels and inns in central New York that had a colorful history, the Hotel Utica, Martin, Yates, Onondaga, and Hotel Syracuse were the biggest, most extravagant, and favorite centers of culture and entertainment for their time. For those people who lived and worked in Utica and Syracuse a century earlier, each city had its own grand hotels. Following the American Revolution, central New York was an unbroken wood and swampland. Inns and taverns were established even before there was a Syracuse or Utica. In 1789, the citizens of Old Fort Schuyler met in Moses Bagg's Inn and Tavern to name their village. The ancient port of Carthage was dropped into a hat, and it was Utica that won the draw. Moses Bagg came to Utica in 1794 and opened his tavern on the corner of John and Main Streets. For the next 117 years, Bagg's Hotel would be the cultural and entertainment center of the city of Utica. The first grand hotel to make an appearance in Syracuse came in 1819. Of course, it wasn't even Syracuse then, it was Corinth. And the hamlet consisted of a tavern, an old schoolhouse, grist mill, several shanties, and ground was broke for the Erie Canal. With $900, Luther Buell and Shubael Safford bought a parcel of land and built the first brick two-story structure. It was called the Syracuse House, after the brand-new name of the village that was growing up around it. For 70 years, this hotel was the center of entertainment and culture. In 1896, the building was torn down to make way for the Onondaga County Savings Bank. That wasn't the only time the bank and hotel crossed paths. In 1840, Onondaga County Bank issued a $3 bill that was embellished with a vignette of the old Syracuse House. The building was 4 stories, surmounted by a square cupola and piazzas extending across both fronts of the 3 upper stories. Famous names appearing on the registry of the hotel included entertainers, presidents, and statesmen, like Henry Clay. The popular lawmaker came to Syracuse to take in the New York State Fair, then being held on James Street Hill. A very proper young lady, smitten with the formidable senator, stole a kiss from the Southern gentleman to the amazement of the crowds.
We hope that Mr. Clay will have compassion on the poor youths around him, and not forbid the sweet creatures from kissing too much. The Daily Star.
The incident might not seem like much today, but consider this. Clay was a crotchety 72 years old in 1849, and it was an athletic feat in itself for a young lady in a hoop skirt, corset, and holding a parasol to actually jump onto an open horse carriage. On March 9, 1868, Charles Dickens performed the Pickwick Papers and A Christmas Carol at the Wheating Opera House. Syracuse natives were in a tither. So was the noted author.
The streets of this city are muddy. The weather is depressing, and my room at the Syracuse House is close and sour. Wine comes in 2 prices, 6 and 15 shillings, for what is really the same wine. I had an old buffalo for supper, an old pig for breakfast, and we are going to have an I don't know what for dinner.
Bagg's Hotel served Utica for 117 years. It was an integral part of that community's growth in the 19th century. The same can be said of the Syracuse House. This property was located in the heart of the Salt City for some 70 years. Both facilities were the focal points for the people that were moving through central New York to the west, and the focal point for the people who decided to settle in these cities. These hotels witnessed and took part in some of the most notable events of their community's history. First and foremost was the engineering wonder of the early 1800s. the Erie Canal. The waterway not only brought people to Utica and Syracuse, it brought commerce and culture. Passengers from the packet boats would flock to the hotels, but even more growth was to come to Utica and Syracuse because of the locomotive. One of the most tragic historical events also came by rail. President Abraham Lincoln's funeral train made its way through Utica and Syracuse in 1865. By the end of the 19th century, Baggs Hotel and the Syracuse House were showing their age. America, too, was changing. The horse and buggy era was to move aside for the automobile and airplane. The hotels of the 19th century were to make way for the hotels of the 20th century. In 1896, the Syracuse House was leveled, but the Yates was built across from City Hall. The Onondaga would follow a few years later, and by 1924, the Hotel Syracuse would be in place. In Utica, the American Hotel was remodeled and became the Martin. The owners of Baggs Hotel decided to build a new facility in the new century, and by 1912, the Hotel Utica opened its doors. From the turn of the century to the 1960s, the downtown areas of Utica and Syracuse were the centers of culture, community, and commerce. It was the place to see and the place to be seen. These grand hotels were the public American palaces. More than just accommodations for the rich or the traveler, these hotels played an important role in central New York family life. Just ask any young lady how important a big downtown hotel wedding is.
November 28th, 1909. Cousin Ethel, this is the hotel office where I am spending my winter vacation. And if you and Evelyn have a double wedding, this is the place you want to strive for. Then you will want to live here forever. I will tell you all about it when I get back. Love, Fanny.
Everything was downtown. You could come down and spend the whole day and have a wonderful time. Theaters,
well, downtown back
hotels.
then was vibrant. It was the place to be. Every place you could do anything downtown as far as entertainment or business-wise.
Downtown was fabulous. You know, when I in the early 40s, as I remember it, prior to even coming to the hotel, God, it was a wonderful city because it had so much to offer.
When I was a young man, I was a Boy Scout, and on Christmas shopping nights, we would stand on the street corners with bamboo poles with red flags on the end to hold the crowd back so they wouldn't cross against the light. That's how heavy the crowds were. Then when the lights changed, you lifted your pole and the crowds would go through. They were just a mass of people downtown in those days.
Theaters, hotels, beautiful stores, eating places, beautiful. It was a thriving city.
During the early 50s, we had such fabulous places as Addis's and Fla's and Days and all these gorgeous stores in downtown Syracuse, and there was shopping, would be just busier than ever.
Coming up, the Green Room, the Stag Room, the Roof Garden, and the Rainbow Lounge. Programs like Grand Hotels of Central New York stay on track with the help of viewers like you. Please show your support of this program and WCNY-TV by becoming a member of this public broadcasting station. I think that there were unique people for all three of those properties. I mean, the Yates Hotel was a very unique property that was basically kind of a headquarters for a lot of the political groups. Obviously, it was across from the City Hall and everything else, and they kind of hung around there. And Mr. Pop and all those great guys, they were wonderful people, did a great job at the Yates Hotel. The Onondaga Hotel in itself had a very fabulous, beautiful dining room, had a roof garden. Also, it had the old travel lounge, which was a fabulous room. And Hotel Syracuse, probably a very unique place, more than anyone could ever imagine, because it had everything going on here. It was a city within a city in its own time. 49-year Hotel Syracuse veteran Gene DePaulis.
But of course, in those days, nothing was done outside of the hotel, or practically nothing. We had our own upholstery shop. We had our own woodworking shop, carpenters and so forth. We had our own print shop who did all the menus in-house, because there was a daily change of menus, and they would rotate perhaps every 28 days. So you could get items in our Dutch coffee shop, which was a full menu of, I don't know how many entrees right now, but probably at least 20, that would change every day for 28 days. So if you came in here, you wouldn't have the same thing to eat like the menus of today. You have a fixed menu, and that's it. But in those days, that wasn't the case.
Viola Cross worked at the Hotel Utica.
In the store, in here, in the lobby, we had a beautiful jewelry shop. And we had a newsstand in a cigar place right near the men's bar. And the men's bar was off the lobby, that no women were allowed to go in, just men only. And that was always thriving. I'll be very honest about that. It was because the women weren't in the bar. It was just for men only.
The hotel had typically really full service. We had barber shops, we had women's hairdressing shops, we had a lady shop top flight, a men's shop top flight. We had our own transportation department where employees of the hotel would book you on these trains, which most of the people, the traveling men, in those days came in by train. And they would stop at our place and make reservations and so forth for their next stop, and we took care of all that in-house.
I recall a story, and I don't recall the name, but there was a man who was a trustee of Hamilton College, for example, who would come up from time, however many times a year, for the trustees meeting up on the hill. His wife would come with him. They would stay at the Hotel Utica, and while he was attending the trustees meetings, she would do all the shopping that she wanted to in downtown Utica, buy all those things that she couldn't get in New York. If the railroad station was the gateway to the city in that era, then these hotels, of course, were the city's guest rooms.
They would walk into the lobby, and the lobby was just beautifully decorated, beautifully decorated.
I was fortunate enough to come here early in late 59, 60 to see some of the remnants. And I mean, it was just gorgeous. There were crystal glass here left from the early 30s. Every single glass in this building was blown glass from Bryce Glass Company. And it was just wonderful.
The Yates Hotel also offered its customers grand surroundings.
There might be a chance to bring back another hotel in Utica, but certainly never with the way it was, where people gave you that the white glove, literally the white glove treatment when you checked into these hotels. I think that's a whole way of life that we've lost, not just in Utica and not just with hotels, but it's just a different way of life.
I liked the Martin because I worked there, and then I came into the Hotel Utica, and I've stayed here since 1951, and I still.
We had a great staff here. We had all professionals in those days.
I think it was the people. You got to remember, in those days, we were very fortunate. The city of Syracuse was not too far from New York City. It brought a lot of immigrants here from the various countries.
People that came over from European countries, and they started in this business learning it when they were like 12 years old. And this was their profession. They were proud of it. They came over. They did a great job.
Clerks behind the desk were very courteous, pleasant, well-mannered, and they would assign the rooms, and the bellhops would come in, take their luggage upstairs, prepare their room, whatever they wanted. And it was we always had nice compliments from anyone that ever stayed here, always.
Professional service was just one of the aspects of a grand hotel. Another aspect had to be the accommodations. These grand hotels also cater to the business community. Whole rooms were set up to help businesses drum up business.
I don't remember Marilyn Monroe coming through here, but I would have loved it.
You either stayed at the Hotel Utica or you stayed at the Hotel Hamilton.
The grand hotels of central New York played host to presidents like Teddy Roosevelt. To actors like Rudolph Valentino. Tom Mix. Even Tennessee Ernie Ford and Anita Bryant visited Utica and Syracuse. These very important people brought to Central New York a taste of Hollywood, Washington, and points beyond.
Rockefeller was a great guy, loved the city of Syracuse, loved to come to the hotel, have great luncheons here for his, for the Chamber of Commerce, up to 300 or 400 people on the Persian Terrace.
During the war, many VIPs made their way into Central New York. Maureen O'Hara. Dinah Shore.
Since I've worked here, we've had many famous people come in, stayed here. Any of the great artists here at the Stanley Theater, most of the entertainers stayed here at the hotel. And I've met like Greer Garson, Audrey Totter, Victor Jory, Joan Crawford. Joan Rivers was here. She was a guest of the Kiwanis. The one I'll always remember and loved was Mrs. Roosevelt. She was the most gracious lady I have ever met. She would come into the kitchen and talk to all the personnel here in the kitchen and thank them for the nice service and what they did and how hardworking. She was a very kind lady, very. And I'll always talk about her because she was very, very nice, pleasant.
Two major league teams would come into New York State every year to play the Hall of Fame game in Cooperstown. And in those days, they would come in, they'd spend the night at the Hotel Utica. And it was nice for people around here because you could just go down to the Hotel Utica and you'd sit in the lobby and you'd wait and they'd come downstairs and you'd be standing there with a baseball or a baseball card and they'd oblige you with an autograph. So it was kind of nice in that way too.
Beautifully enough, we had the area of the Kennedys, and we had Bob Kennedy come here with a Boston baked dinner, which we served for during his time when Jack was running for the presidency. Fabulous guy.
The hotels were the place to catch a rising star. But even on a starless night, fun could be found in the Yates Bar, the Lamplighter Room, or the Rainbow Lounge.
Well, the Rainbow Lounge was a room that had a tremendous men's bar. It was famous all over the country. Everybody knew the Rainbow Lounge. If somebody was in Chicago and said, I'm going to Syracuse, I'll meet you in the Rainbow Lounge. They knew where the Rainbow Lounge was in the Hotel Syracuse. And it was a men's bar. We didn't allow women at the bar. 65 to 70 feet, sort of a semicircular bar. It was all glass. It was a magnificent looking bar. It was way before its time, actually. It was a very expensive bar to build. It was unique. It was, and then the room had a bandstand in the middle, so forth, that all these famous trios played at. The Yates Bar was a bar that most of it got to be known as a lot of the lawyers and the politicians used that bar. It was near City Hall. A lot of the lawyers' offices were over in the Hills building at that time, and they utilized that place. It was a great, great bar. It was a very long bar, and it could accommodate a lot of people And it was very well run. It was a nice bar, a businessman's bar, and it was heavy traffic there.
The Hotel Utica also had the lamplighter room. The lamplighter room was a bar and grill, and it was quite a watering hole in Utica. And someone told me that old cliche about if only those walls could talk, and I think that's true in that case. If those walls only could talk, we'd have a lot of stories.
In 1944, the Hotel Martin was sold, and it was renamed the Hotel Hamilton. By 1966, it fell victim to urban renewal. The 1960s also saw the Onondaga targeted for the wrecking ball. In the 1970s, the Yates was destroyed. Now the site is a parking lot. The last two grand hotels to be built in this century still stand, but only one remains a hotel. In the early 1970s, the 360-room Hotel Utica became a residential home. The Hotel Syracuse remains, but the future is bright because of a commitment to remember, restore, and revere what was a grand hotel of Central New York.